flags that you see from candidates, like when you're screening them, and then like what are red flags as well. Like you kind of already listed some red flags, so I guess we'll just go with green flags. Like how can I, if I'm looking for a new job, if I have an HR screening, how can I give my best first impression?
I think the compliment that Leo just gave you about being human, I think that is a really big green flag when I see individuals that do something more than just a resume blast, right? Because anyone can apply for a position, and then you get in that mindset where you're just like attach, apply, attach, do these things. And so a green flag for me is when you aren't a bot, you're a human. And so what that looks like to me is how prepared are they when they came in? Did they connect with me on LinkedIn? If I didn't respond to their resume right away, did they follow up with me via email? Did they follow up with a phone call? Whatever is appropriate for what you're applying for. But I think being a human to connect your resume to an actual person is super helpful, because so many people don't do that anymore. Gotcha. And if you want to stand out, that's a way to stand out.
I'ma be who I gotta be. I ain't living in your fantasy, and I'll be real if it's the death of me. I'ma be who I gotta be, and I don't care who you pretend to be, cause I'll be real if it's the death of me. Yeah, liars are liars, they burning in fire.
Welcome to a special edition of the P.E.A.C.E podcast. I'm joined as always by the best co-host that anyone could ever have, Mr. Kenny Lowe and Carlos Golightly. But we have a special guest today that needs no introduction, but she's going to get one anyway. I've worked with this person, and it seems like one of the best experiences, jobs, or whatever in my life, and I can directly contribute that largely to her. She's an HR recruiting expert, and for those of you in the startups world, like, that this sometimes includes like operations and pretty much everything else that the business would need. She's been in the industry for at least 15 years from what I can see, and is now the VP of HR and talent management at a banking institution. I've seen some of the fun hobbies that she's done and projects that she's created like on the side in her super busy life. Have no clue how she's done it, and can attest that she is also very handy in the construction space. So most importantly, though, she is a mom and a wife and an awesome friend to many people. She's about to give us a masterclass on how to land your next dream job. Welcome to the podcast, Miss Emily Wolfington.
Thank you. I feel like I need to applaud. That was amazing, Leo. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here and excited to just share some more and hopefully drop some information and knowledge that will be useful for everybody listening today. So thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining. And you don't have to thank me for the introduction. You did all of the work, literally everything that I just said. Like you were the one who did it. I have a question though. Did I get anything wrong in my intro? Normally, like, somebody has to like correct me, so I have to make sure.
I have one correction.
All right, there we go.
I'm now an SVP. I got promoted.
So, oh my goodness.
That's a good correction, though. Congrats.
I love it. Congratulations. Hey, this is a good start to the podcast right here. This is a great start. Alrighty. Well, congratulations. How long ago was this?
Thank you. It's been a minute now. I mean, technically in January, it'll be a full year.
Oh, okay.
But we also got a new CEO. Our organization has been through just a ton of change and transition. And, I think that also is something I can bring to the table. So if people are like, well, let's talk about transition and change, like, happy to talk about that, because I definitely think that's a transferable, important skill when you're interviewing, and like how to talk through that. But yeah, so it's been about a year, and it feels like yesterday and 10 years ago, literally all at the same time. So yeah, it's not been super recent, but I don't talk about myself all that much. So
yeah,
thanks for giving me that opportunity to say, oh yeah, I'm an SVP now.
SVP, yeah, that's something. I thought a VP was enough to brag about, and she's pulling out the big flex. All right, so let's start off. That's like the end SVP, or maybe it's still kind of like the start maybe of your career. But where did you start? Like, how did you get into HR, recruiting. Also, which one do you like to call it? I had a conversation with, and maybe it was y'all. I had a conversation with somebody, and they're like, "Yeah, well, there's a difference between recruiting and human resources." So, like, you wanna clear that up and kind of tell us how you got here.
Yeah, so I'll start with cleaning up the difference between recruiting and HR. And, I think there are some people that are really good at recruiting and they don't understand HR, or some people are really good at HR, but they don't necessarily understand recruiting. And I'm of the mindset that if I'm going to lead a team well, I need to be able to do all the things. And so it was important to me to shoestring along and figure out how do I do all those facets well, because
Mm-hmm.
if I'm recruiting and bringing you in, I need to be able to focus on the retention side of why you're here and keeping you there. And that's what I feel like made me cross the bridge from just focusing on recruiting is to more on the retention side, which is typically done through the HR side of the house.
Okay.
So, so yeah, that's my perspective and take on it. But are there people that are gifted at doing both? Heck yes. But not very many people are interested in doing both. So, so yeah. And then how did I start? You know what? I tried honestly to talk myself out of HR for a long time because I when I first started in HR, I mean, you touched on it. Now it's been almost 15 years ago. It wasn't cool. It wasn't a degree. It was like Toby on The Office, right? Like that was HR. And so I did not want to do it. And yeah, I was like, I'll go to sales. I'll just go into sales. But then what kept attracting me back was, well, in sales, I'm not really like, I mean, you're building relationships, but I'm not like cultivating relationships in the way that I wanted to. And so, yeah, something just kept pulling me back and I decided to go all in. And so what took me to into HR, as I mentioned, I was in sales, but then I was also like willing to be an administrative assistant, to do IT, to do a lot of different things because I thought it was operations that I wanted. And that was really fun. And it gave me a ton of perspective to, I feel like, set me up to be stronger as an HR professional because I had done the roles that I was recruiting for, or I had done the roles that I was like helping them figure out a career path or what was the next step. So I'm grateful for all my experience. There's definitely some past positions that I'm like, I could have done without it, but I am grateful for a lot of them. So
If you had to take a faster path, what would it be? So it sounds like you appreciate your operations role, but if you had to take a faster path, what would it be?
to SVP or to into HR?
Let's start with it's HR. And maybe that's the same thing to some extent, but let's start with HR.
Yeah, I think to get a faster track into HR, probably starting as like an HR coordinator or an HR assistant. And so then you're learning like with a leader, you're following someone that's like telling you, you're executing on what they're trying to accomplish. That path probably would have been a lot easier and faster, and I would have just understood concepts a lot more. But recruiting for me, that fast pace and I mean, just craziness was so much fun. So, so yeah, I liked the path that I took, but I think HR coordinator and or HR assistant would have been better and better.
Yeah.
So yeah, good question.
I'm guessing you had a HR job that sold you on HR. There's a certain point in time where it was like, oh, okay, this is what I want to do.
It was a person. Yeah. I was with Kohl's department stores at the time, and I was a manager. And our store manager was like, I don't really want to do performance reviews. And he was sharing with me about like the stress and the anxiety of doing. And I was like, oh, I love that. I'll do our entire stores. And he was like, all 120. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you want. He was like, seriously. And I said, yeah, for sure. And so I helped write them. And I mean, at that point, I knew everyone in our store and cared. So I was like, oh, I'll totally do it. And then there was a recruiting exercise. We were hiring for our overnight team. And he was like, oh, man, I can't get any of these jobs filled. And I'm like, I'll do it. And so, yeah, I think there were just a lot of times where what someone else didn't want to do, and I knew I could really help them out. I was like, well, I'll do it. So, and then those types of projects that I kept raising my hand for that everyone else hated, I really loved. And that's literally one of those moments where I thought to myself, quit fighting it and just think about it. So I met a person from the HR team at Kohl's, and I remember thinking, I want to be her when I grow up. And that's when I was like, okay, maybe I do want to do this. And that just planted a seed that some moments I was like really in, and other times I was like, no, I don't want to be Toby. I don't want to be Toby. So anyway,
nobody likes Toby.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. So you guys on the podcast, when you think HR, what are some of the first things that come to mind?
The police.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's true. That's what I want to touch on. Is like that's definitely what you think about it right off the bat. Is like when HR gets involved, think someone's in trouble, or like yes, naturally that's kind of
rules.
Here comes HR. Yeah.
I mean,
HR
it's like,
involved.
yeah, whenever you see a meeting, you see HR's in it. You don't have a good feeling.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's hard. That's something I have to overcome still. And I've been with this organization almost 3 years, and I can't tell you how many times I've set a meeting and then sent them a follow-up email, or like God had to go out of my way to explain in the agenda what it was. And, now I would say majority of the team is like, oh, she doesn't need an agenda accept, but there are still a ton of people.
Yeah.
Whoa, no, I don't want this. So I get it. Anything else like police or anything that comes to mind when you think about HR?
Yeah. Now Toby. I mean, I didn't have that. I'm a big office person. I did not think of Toby. So yeah, now 100%.
It definitely was never. It was never like a good thing. I guess for from our department that I worked with, it was like just like we got an email, and if it said like, "Hey, can you come upstairs, come see me?" It's like, "Oh my goodness, what happened?" I thought things were going so well, So like it got to the point for a while that I remember when I was working in warehousing, that like in the emails, like in quotations, "You are not in trouble." It had to be like that for a while, just to put you at ease. But
wow. It's true.
How do you deal with that? Because I'm always on the other side of, if HR reach out to me, then sure, I can feel bad, but how do you deal with that as the person, with no bad intentions, but how do you deal with that then?
I think I learned a valuable lesson early on about, it's not me, it's the job. And so my job is now to teach people to overcome that and look at me as a person and not HR. So, I definitely think earlier in my career, that's why I wanted to talk myself out of this profession. But then in time, it was kind of like challenge accepted. Here I am joining this organization, and show them that when HR reaches out to you, it's for something cool. And of course, there are still really hard things and conversations that I have to have, but I want the majority of the people that I reach out to be like, oh, I get to meet with HR, not, oh crap, I have to meet with HR. So yeah, some days it's easier, some days it's harder. It just depends.
Alrighty, let's get into some fun stuff. Unless Kenny, go like, yeah, I got something. Let's get into some fun stuff before we get into, because we want to make sure we get into tips and stuff like that on how to get a job. So, do you have any? Oh, go ahead, G.
Yeah, I was just gonna say before we dove into it, like I think me and you have encountered this in the Army. And, as she was describing it, as we were talking about, I'm like, man, that sounds like an NCO. Like that's the narrative that's painted on like NCOs, and like leadership in the military. Yeah. So I just know personally that like being a part of that change and like repainting that narrative, I don't think there's anything more rewarding, when you actually can, like, what do they call it? Humanize the rank. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been huge. So I just kind of thought about it as she was mentioning. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up before we dove into it.
Yeah, you're right. No, like being able to be the person, let's just call it, with power or
Mhm.
position, and you know it could be detrimental because you have so much control, and
Mhm.
still being the person that people trust and want to be around, and all that good stuff. Yeah, that's a tough balance to do, and
Yeah.
have to do it literally 24/7.
Mhm.
At NCO, it's like, hey, I can bounce in and out of this because not everything's going to be bad unless it's a detail.
Right.
Some NCOs are just like wanting to hand out details whenever they can. But as HR,
Yeah.
it's always like, if I have to talk to somebody, it's probably not, or unless it's about insurance or something like that. Everybody wants to
Right.
talk to HR about insurance.
And that's the part I'm like, ugh, I don't like talking about insurance. Talk to me about anything else but insurance and payroll, but
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you have to do
Let
it, right?
me be human for once.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. I wanted to jump into some fun stories maybe that you could offer up. I have a few of my own, but I don't want to offer up stories. And maybe you got something better than the stories that I've heard or seen, but fun stories that have happened to you, and strictly as you being, the HR person at your company that you had to deal with, which, with you being a human, it's probably like, all right, this is funny. Well, with this being my job, it's like, gosh,
Yeah.
this is the worst thing
Really?
ever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of them, and and you know the person. So, but yeah, so a favorite story is I came into the office one Monday morning, and I was usually at the time one of the first person in the office, and just looked over the break room, just how's it looking, how we doing, all the things, and I found beer had been sprayed like all over the break room, and there were empty beer cans just in the sink. And at first I had one of those like, where am I right now? I'm not at our office. Am I on the right floor? Like, where are we right now? And yeah, so I cleaned it up because I also didn't want anyone else to find it. And the whole time, so I'm like cleaning up the floor, wiping down the counters. As I'm cleaning, the madder I am getting. And I'm like, if this was an employee, I'm like, no, it's not an employee. It was security. Security came in here. Security broke into our beer. And, I'm like, no way is this
Security broke in.
Yeah, or like did a laugh. Like I was just so sure it wasn't an employee. And yeah, come to find out, it certainly was an employee. And so, yeah, I remember teeing it up as, hey, we are all adults. We have alcohol in our office because we can be responsible and clean up after ourselves. But today, unfortunately, I walked in and found empty beer cans. And if that was one of our employees, like, this better never happen again. Like, I didn't want people to rat each other out, but I was also like, you freaking did this. And then I found out it was an employee. And it's so funny because I had speculations of who it was.
I think everyone had.
Yeah.
Well, let me put it this way. Some people had speculations, and I think everyone just kind of like, yeah, most likely it's this person.
Probably
Yeah.
feel who it was. Like, there's nobody else but
Nobody else is gonna
Yeah.
do this.
And so, and we didn't we do it like all underneath. We didn't want our CEO to find out too, because
Yeah.
that was another thing. So anyway, when I think about my position, right, it's about building trust. And there are some times when I can just handle it. And then there are other times where I have to get other people involved. And that's a part of building trust. So I am pretty sure we didn't end up telling our CEO about it because I was like, it's handled, it's fine, we got it. But yeah, this individual to this day still is like, so Emily, do you want to go shotgun beer? I'm like, hate you so much. But yeah, so that was a pretty like look back and laugh type of moment.
Oh yeah, it was very funny in the moment. Maybe not for you, but it was hilarious. I tried to stay as far as I possibly could, give the situation away from it. But it was very funny in the moment. It was unbelievably funny. That's what it was. It's like, those things that happen. Like, go lightly. Your face just said it all. When she said she found beer, you're like, beer?
Like, what?
Yeah.
So beer cans at work?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like where we go? What happened?
Yeah, unbelievably funny is exactly what it was.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Love that.
And I think other
That's
like
the type of things
benefits.
that make you seasoned.
Sorry, say that again, Carlos.
I'll say that's the type of things that make you seasoned. Like that's something that you can't really be taught. That type of experience just.
Mm-hmm.
That's what accelerated that SVP position.
Quick on the feet. Quick on the feet. Yeah.
Did you have another one?
Oh, I've got. So this takes me back to my recruiting days, and this, when we were talking about like how to prepare for this, how do we have conversations around what to do or not to do in the interview, interview process. I remember meeting with a candidate applying for a position, and they were very honest when I said, "So why are you here? What attracted you to the position?" And like I should have known red flag 1, but then there were like 15 in the interview. But the first one was, I actually forgot where I was even coming today. Thankfully, on the elevator. Oh, okay. So that was one start. And then, well, so why are you looking for a new position? I lost my job, and it was because of attendance, and I just need another new job. Oh, okay.
Oh.
Okay. And then this was like back in the day. Do you remember when you could set your own caller ID when you called someone?
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly, but baby daddy was definitely in the caller ID. And I was like,
Oh,
I think we're going to have to hard pass on you, my friend. So yeah, it was just a plethora of
jeez.
bad.
Wow.
But
I forgot where I was coming today, but luckily the elevator had your sign up.
Jeez.
Yeah. I'm really glad you want to be here. This is good. Good
Wow.
start.
All right. So do you just cut those interviews? Like at some point, like first red flag, you're just like, all right, this is like a really
Now
bad
I do.
one.
Yeah,
Okay.
now I
Okay.
do. Now that I've grown confident in, whoa, why are we
Yeah,
here? But
yeah.
at first I would be like, oh, I'll give you 13 chances.
Yep.
Maybe we
I
can
would be
turn
the
this
same.
around.
I feel
Yeah.
like I would do the same thing. It's like, yeah, I gotta go through all these questions. I gotta check and see if there's any good or whatever.
Come on, there's got to be something in
It's
here.
gotta be something. It's gotta be something. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
All right, that's great. I'm in
It
tears
happens.
over here trying to get myself together. Oh. Alrighty. Los, Kenny, y'all got anything before we jump into tips and stuff like that for the folks?
I guess going back.
Or y'all can I'll kick those off too.
No, I have something. So, like Emily, you talked about. I mean, we talked about like the fun side of things, right? And separating yourself, you as the person versus your job. But what about on the flip side of that? I know this is a tougher question, but like, what about if there's an altercation in the office and it's a negative outcome because one employee, it's like maybe you have to let someone go because of it, or speaking to like dealing with layoffs, like dealing with negative things or perceived negative events. Like, how do you as an HR professional deal with these? How do you prepare for yourself to deal with them as well?
It is. You always want to be prepared, which is really hard when you are working with people. But I think as I've grown in this position, a lot of times my role is reducing risk. And so sometimes you just have to stand back and think about, how do I reduce the risk for the greater organization or the team? And so, of course, you got to keep it in perspective to think about the individuals that you're supporting and then balance that against, okay, I have to do something. So a bad situation or a really scary situation that I had to deal with in the past was an employee of ours, that top performer, one of the best salespeople on our team, not a nice person, right? And caused a lot of hard things in our organization and really brought our culture down. And it was one of those things that they had a very physical conversation with their manager that resulted in them actually physically fighting. And I remember I was on my lunch break and I got a phone call, and it, hey, so-and-so are fighting in one of our conference rooms. So, in that moment, your first thing is, okay, I got to get back there. So I remember running around the circle because I was trying to get in my steps, and I ran back as fast as I could up, got on the elevator up to our floor, and then thinking about, these are two grown men. Do I put myself in between the two of them to figure this out? And I just remember you out here, you that way, and just trying to like think on my feet about what do we need to do. And so again, and sometimes in an HR situation, it's great, reduce the risk, as I said. So sent the employee home, sent the manager home, and you both need to cool off, and we need to talk about this. So in the end, although was a really great employee and one of our best salespeople, I made the decision to terminate that individual. And honestly, Kendrick, it was one of those moments of addition by subtraction, right? That individual was terminated, and the rest of the organization just stepped up in a big way. But another scary part that came of that was they threatened to kill me on social media. And so I didn't follow that person on social media, but a lot of my team did. And they were like, Emily, he's threatening to kill you. And I'm sure it was a quote unquote empty threat, but my first reaction was, how do I take care of the team? And what do I need to do? So, yeah, I think that was one of the worst moments of my career, but also one of the better ones, because it made me grow in ways I'd never experienced a gun threat or anything against myself or my organization at all. So being able to work with our CEO, our security team, just ensuring that we had the right safety and protocols. And, I've certainly had an opportunity to work through that and connect with the former employee. And I think we're fine, but it is certainly one of those things that I find myself being like, you could never prepare for that moment. No one goes into work thinking that that's going to be normal, but
absolutely,
I just always focus on, how do I protect our organization? And maybe that's a silly thing to do, but my husband was outraged that I went to the office the next day. And I said, well, if I'm not there to take care of everybody else, if they need me, I mean, a lot of people saw that. If I don't come to work, what's that say to them? So yeah, I just sometimes just try to show up and be there. And sometimes that's all I can do.
Wow.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that. Like that's tough. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask. It's like, because you made a really good comment of not, like it's like you said, it's part of your job, right? Like, but your job isn't you, like separating the person from like HR essentially. And I think HR gets a really bad rep. Like people blame the person all the time, but it's not the person, right? Like it, and so to me, it's like it can be scary because you can get situations like this. Like how many times if you have to let someone go, like you don't know if they're going to blow up when they're getting their stuff, or stuff like you can't prepare yourself for situations like that. And like I don't know, I feel like it's tough, and I feel like HR is always the scapegoat. I feel like people will always turn around and just blame HR, like it's their fault. It's not my fault, it's their fault.
Yeah, and it's hard being in the profession, but it's also like one of my biggest things that I think about, just showing care, because I've been through reduction in workforces. I've had to let lots of people go. I've had to do that. And if I don't do that with care and them fully understanding that I'm not doing this to them, this is a business decision, and really talking to them about it, like it can be so much worse. And so I think really good HR people lead with empathy and care. And sometimes it's harder. I'm not perfect at it. I wish I could be even better, but I try my best to always approach every situation to be caring, empathetic, and just saying like, okay, great. I don't know what this person's going through, and I may be delivering really bad news. So if that were me, how would I want to make sure I was treated? So, yeah, I think that's helped me in my role quite a bit, just taking that approach.
That's huge.
Kenny's
I got
our
really deep. I'm sorry. I'm like,
no.
this is such a
That's
deep conversation. So, but
that's
yeah,
what we're here
there's
for.
so much good in my job too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What were you gonna say, Leo?
I was just gonna say Kenny's our resident. Like I already told you, he's a human on the podcast. So I appreciate that question, Kenny. Did you want to kick it off with, because you got all the resume and interview? You were super excited about that podcast, Kenny. Did you want to kick it off with one of your favorite questions or question for?
I guess sure. I mean,
Kicking
to
job.
start it off, like, what advice do you have for candidates, like going into an interview? Like, what are some green flags that you see from candidates, like when you're screening them, and then like what are red flags as well? Like, you kind of already listed some red flags, so I guess we'll just go with green flags. Like, how can I, if I'm looking for a new job, if I have an HR screening, how can I give my best first impression?
I think the compliment that Leo just gave you about being human, I think that is a really big green flag when I see individuals that do something more than just a resume blast, right? Because anyone can apply for a position, and then you get in that mindset where you're just like, attach, apply, attach, do these things. And so a green flag for me is when you aren't a bot, you're a human. And so what that looks like to me is, how prepared are they when they came in? Did they connect with me on LinkedIn? If I didn't respond to their resume right away, did they follow up with me via email? Did they follow up with a phone call? Whatever is appropriate for what you're applying for. But I think being a human to connect your resume to an actual person is super helpful, because so many people don't do that anymore. Gotcha. And if you want to stand out, that's a way to stand out. So I think that's a good starting place. When you are applying for positions, committing to yourself that it's going to take time. And in the time that you're giving yourself, be prepared to speak about yourself. I know a lot of people hate. So tell me about yourself. Tell me about this. And the more that you hear, it's fine. We all have those nervous tendencies. I even have them being on this podcast today. But if I'm not going to sell myself and tell that person what I'm looking for, why are we here? So I would say, just make sure that when you get asked that question, do you have something valuable to share? And
that's a good point.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems simple, but it's hard. So just taking the time to really think about that. And when you're looking up companies, I love when you say, oh, do you have any questions for me? When candidates say something to the fact, oh, hey, on your resume, I noticed this section, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing about this? Like, if they take the time to be so prepared, and even in just like one little call out to say, I saw this on your website and I was so intrigued. What did that mean to you? Or how were you involved with that? Or can you tell me a little bit more about that? I love when candidates just care enough to spend time doing some research to be prepared. And to me, it's less about applying to 15 jobs. Apply to 2 that you really care about, and then spend the time doing them really well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Other green flags. I'm a big nerd about thank you notes.
That was my question.
And it doesn't have to be handwritten. It can be an email. It's the 21st century. But I do appreciate a thank you note. And again, when it's tied back to the conversation. So I just think about Carlos getting to know you. If I were to write you a thank you note, thank you, Carlos, for the time today. You shared a little bit more about connecting my profession to make it more relatable for your viewers and your listeners. And I really appreciate that. Or, when we were talking earlier, thank you for your service. Thank you for, and just making sure that I picked up on something about you in my thank you to show that I was listening and I care. So, that as opposed to thanks for the time today, which is still a very nice thank
Mhm.
you. And here's what I really appreciate about our time together. I think really,
Yeah, this was important to me.
The thank you
super
notes.
helpful. Yeah. What other
That's
green
cool. I
flags
like
or
that.
red flags, or like, oh, I have an HR person, I want to ask if this is real or not. What are some of those things that I could maybe dispel even?
Wait, hold on. Say that one more time, Emily.
That
Oh,
was a good
sorry.
question, though.
I was just saying, we talked about green flags, some red flags, but you got an HR person. What are some of those, like, oh, is this real? Is this a real thing? Are there any items that I can dispel for you all?
Hey, what up? It's Leo with the Peace Podcast. Hopefully, you're enjoying the episode. If you wouldn't do me a quick favor, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit like. You've made it this far. Hopefully, you're learning something. Peace.
Well, she already tackled one of them. I was gonna say, what's the view on follow up emails, and like those thank you notes, because some candidates may feel that they are pestering, right? I know you probably got 501 candidates today, so I'm gonna make your 1013th email saying, hey, it was nice chatting with you today, and so I just like that you called that out and said that there are people and HR specialists out there that appreciate that. So I think that was really important. Kenny, you mentioned it a few when we talked about it a while back, but we talked about having our resumes pass. What is it called again?
That's what I was gonna ask about. Yep. Yeah, like the
Oh,
AI bots or whatever.
the
The
automation. Have you?
yeah,
Have you
ATS or
automation.
something like that.
automation?
Applicant
You just
tracking
need
system.
to have your resume pass automation and not get automatically declined.
But there's got to be a hack to it. There has to be a hack to it. There has to be words on the website or
You just
LinkedIn.
yeah. You just need keywords. You need to match the keywords.
Right, but how do you know? You can't just throw keywords also in
You
your
look
resume.
at
So
you look at the job posting. If you're not looking at the job posting and then like copying over, like look at the responsibilities and the details, and then you think about how does this match up with what I do in my current job? How can I show that I have some experience in this? And then you write that. You should you need to rewrite your resume every single time you apply to a job.
Which sounds really daunting if you're applying for
a lot.
If you're applying for the same type of role, that is a lot easier to do than you think. So I'm not saying, like Kendrick, what you're saying is there's a lot of truth in that, to customize it and tweak it. But if you have done the research to prepare yourself on like, what do I want to do? Find those positions and use that one resume for those types of positions with maybe like a subtle nuance here or there. But yeah, it's keyword search. You're not tricking, but you're telling the applicant tracking system there's a match between what's being asked for in the resume to what is being asked in the job description. And again, a computer isn't smart enough to know the difference. They just think that's a perfect match. We need to advance this candidate to the next round. So
it doesn't give you the job, but also like I've had a coworker get declined because the resume that was passed through he applied through LinkedIn and it didn't carry over the resume correctly, and so he got rejected instantly, whereas he met the qualifications. And so he reached out to the recruiter and said, what the heck, like I think I qualify. And then they said, oh, your LinkedIn profile didn't carry over, like sure, like we'll give you an interview because you do qualify.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm thinking. Like there's gotta be like, and I don't want to make math a part of it, but there's gotta be some kind of like math to this.
It's just kind of what Emily said. It's care and level of effort. Like I have 5 different like templates of resumes based on like what industry I'm applying to.
Oh wow.
So that way I have like keywords or like key points, like so I can cater my accomplishments towards like different goals of a different industry, right? And so that's because sometimes like if I work, we worked for a marketing company. How do I translate things in marketing to a finance or a service industry? Exactly. Exactly. Food industry. How do I translate accomplishments over? And also like you need to, same thing with I harped on this before, but like on the tell me about yourself pitch, don't give your life story. You're not supposed to give your life story. You talk about your recent relevant experience and how it can get you the job, like how it applies to the job that you're applying for. So if I'm applying for a job at Terminus again or something. I could be like, I could talk about, hi, I'm Kendrick Lowe. I'm a software engineer at EasyCater. Like right now I'm doing a lot of A/B testing and to try to bring in more revenue and different projects to bring more traffic into our website. And like I saw this job posting for X team or something, and I'm really interested, and I think I have relevant experience towards what this job is doing. It's like you don't need to talk, like you just need a short, like 1 minute, 2 minute elevator pitch on how what you're doing applies to what you're interviewing for and how, like, why you're interested in it. And Emily can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my approach to interviews now, and it's taken me a lot to get here. Like I've failed and succeeded in a lot of different interviews, and I've learned a lot. And I always love asking, just asking questions to the recruiter, like how did I do, or can I have feedback? Also, one question I want to ask is, for Emily, is it okay for candidates to ask the recruiters for information or help or like resources for the interview? Because like I've done that for
100%.
a couple of my recent interviews, and I've gotten like good. I don't want to call it like a rubric, but I've gotten like resources back. I've asked like, hey, is there anything I can do to help prepare myself more for the next step in the interview after I've made it? And a recruiter will send me back like a list. Here's some things to look over. Like here's things to prepare yourself for. It's like I always try to tell people, just ask, because the worst they can do is tell you, sorry, like I don't have anything for you.
Yeah. And a lot of times that's also a test.
Really?
Did they ask for feedback? Did they ask for resources? Yeah. So in an interview process, you're being assessed on what you do and you don't do, right? So if I don't seek out help, and again, I do think it depends on the organization and the company, because I even go back to what you all were talking about with, we've got to outsmart these applicant tracking systems. Well, if the applicant tracking system is so complex that they lose really good people, do you really want to work for that organization anyway?
That's a good point.
So again, as you're thinking about what do you want, because let's say, for example, that I wanted to work for a, I don't know, 200,000 employee company, right? Like they're probably going to have one of the highest applicant tracking systems that I'm going to have to get through, right? Do I really want that? That's not my style, right? Like more power to people that want to do that. But if I'm what I am looking for, if that doesn't show up in my interview process, as I'm assessing this company to work for them, that is a red flag for me as a candidate to say, like your friend that got kicked out of the LinkedIn profile, if they are there, are they happy, right? Because that kind of, yes, errors and mistakes happen. I get it. But if there's not a human looking at the people coming to your organization, that is concerning to me.
Absolutely.
I don't want to work for an organization that's so big that I don't know who's applying for our openings. So, but that's just me. That's what I'm looking for. Someone else is like, nope, want to be a number, want to be a cog in a wheel. Like my husband and I are cut from two very different cloths. Like he loves like getting in, doing his job, going home, right? He's really, really good at it. But I'm like, oh, what am I doing before work, after work, all the things. So yeah, it's just what do you want out of your organization, and how is it reflected in the interview process? Because another thing that I think isn't discussed enough is saying no. Like if you as a candidate have gotten all these red flags along the way, why are you talking yourself into this role still?
That's a good point.
That's not talked about either.
It's a good one. It's a really good one.
So, but yes, Kendrick, customizing your resume, having that relevant pitch about yourself is really important, because it's all about, right, getting their attention fast and getting asked back to tell more of your story next time. Get in what you need to get in right out of the gate, and then let them learn more about you through the interview process.
I have two more questions. I'm gonna turn it over to y'all. One of them though is like what is the best way to bring up salary? So sometimes I know early in the process, like interview stage, there's a what are your salary expectations? But then the candidate rarely gets to know what the salary should be or what the range should be, unless, there's a lot more companies that are being transparent with their pay. But let's just say that it's in a black box. How should the interviewer go in not knowing what the pay might be for the role that they actually want? What's the best way to bring that up?
Oh, or also like I guess the flip side of that, how do you answer the like what's your salary expectation
Or how do you
question?
answer it? Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've heard different strategies.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you hear different stories because of laws now.
True.
State by state are so different. So, some states require that positions have their salary ranges posted, or, it's a part of their pay transparency, what they are aspiring for. And so I think it just kind of depends. And that's why there is so much variance on like, what's the best way. I don't know that there is a magic formula, but things that have worked for me. So turning the question around, great. So, and I'm a big fan of open, right? Like I'm open. So if this were me and I was asked, well, Leo, because you asked the question, well, what are your salary expectations? Well, I want to ensure that I find an organization that I feel valued and respected. So it's not just about salary for me. I'd like to understand total compensation. So I'm open to learn more. I'm open to take a job, but I'm open to learn more about what total compensation means. Because for me, my salary is a part of it. But if I don't have enough time off to be with my littles when they're sick, if I don't have the flexibility to leave at 4:30 so I make pickup time every day, because my husband does drop off, I have to be there for pickup. So like there are more things for me that go into total compensation. So I try to keep it open and focus on total compensation as opposed to just how much am I going to make?
Yeah.
But for some, they need to know that, right? Like, what's the hourly rate? What's the salary? So I think you just have to be really real with yourself on like, what are you trying to go off in after? But if I'm, again, like, I really is this a waste of my time? Right? Like saying that can be said a lot nicer. And hey, I want to be respectful of both of our time through the interview process and just ensure that we're in the right ballpark. Can you give me some type of idea on what are the factors that go in to helping you decide what a candidate will make and what does that range look like? Because I will tell you more often than not, when we post a range, do you know what every person says?
The highest.
They should be at the top.
Yeah.
Which is not realistic. And so like, let's be real about that a little bit. Like as a candidate, I'm here to tell you, not every time do you get the top. So understand why. What goes into this? Do I understand what I need to do to then get there? So, I think that shows the recruiter or the hiring manager, like you get it, you understand it's not always about like, I have to get here, but I do want to make sure I get there. So those are things that have been really helpful for me and that I've appreciated and have observed in some of the people that we've hired. Now we post our salary ranges, and then like in our own organization, we have salary, so grade levels, and then the salary bands at every grade level. Which that's a lot more transparent than some organizations, but it's funny. I've been at organizations where it's even greater transparency. So you just kind of got to figure out like what the feel is for your culture and what you look for. Like if Kendrick, if you were like, oh, Emily, I need to know what everybody makes in the organization for me to feel like it's a fully transparent organization. And I would have to be very honest and be like, well, we're not there yet. And we may not ever be there yet. So it's just thinking about like, what do you need to find, and how do you figure out how to learn that in the interview process and how you respond to, or you answer questions and then what those responses are.
Yeah, that was a great answer. I actually took some notes for myself for future reference. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I have one more, and then I have another question for you at the end. We are running out of time, unfortunately. No. Thank you. That's typically a good sign when you're running out of time. My other one was, how do you talk about weaknesses? I know that this like ranges
Ooh, great
again.
question.
Like people are like, tell me about one of your weaknesses. Or like I've heard HR people phrase it in this way, like, hey, like what are you gonna struggle with if you take this role? Like, because they're actually trying to figure out, like, hey, if you need help, we need to know now how I can help you. So like, I want to ask, how do you answer that question? Not necessarily what are people looking for, if that makes sense. Like, because some people may not understand what their weaknesses are, and that's probably like a more so therapy thing than an HR thing. But how do you answer that question in a professional sense?
Yeah. So how do I answer it is I do take myself back to how do I receive feedback? And I'm a person that likes receiving feedback. So I ask my team a lot, well, what can I do to better support you? I ask my manager a lot, how am I doing? What do you need from me? And so I really try to think about what have I heard and what have I acted on to try to drive change? And that's the example that I typically try to give. So insert whatever weakness. You say too much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I now make a more concerted effort. And so it's how do you take the time to respond that it's been brought to you that it's an area of weakness and this is how you're trying to improve on it. So my personal story on how I answer that is I'm incredibly hard on myself. And I know that about myself. And so what I try to work on is how do I learn from a situation, stand back from it, and then move on? And how do I help have other people hold me accountable if they see me being down on myself or whatever it is, or questioning myself, looking to them to say, okay, is this all in my head? Am I overthinking this? And then bringing people in to help me overcome that so they can hold me accountable. So that's helped. That's how I answer it is
Okay.
I know that this is an area of weakness. I bring in others to support me. And if you can even speak to, and this is how I've grown, I think that's a fantastic way to talk about an area of weakness on how you're actively working on said weakness.
Okay. I like that you added that in. I don't think that I personally offer up here's what I'm doing to change it. Even if I notice that it's a weakness of mine and I am working on it, I don't think that I've actively like said like, hey, this is my weakness, but I have been doing this. So that's a really good tip right there. I like that.
Well, good. Because that's what the person wants to see.
Yeah.
Are you willing
Exactly.
to know it about yourself and try harder or be better or whatever it is, or seek help to get the help that you need?
Mm-hmm. Kenny G, you all have any questions before I do a surprise fast five for Miss Emily?
I've got one.
Right.
And honestly, I think this is more so me asking quickly for advice as a mentor. So I'm somebody who's transitioned into tech who does not have a college degree. With the job market fluctuating and the talent demand, all those crazy things going up and down, what are some general roles or some positions that we should look at for people trying to look to transition into tech? Whether that's, stepping into a role that may be a little daunting, or, taking on a role to begin with where it's kind of like a learning curve for you. But yeah, just curious to what do you think some general roles are? Like we talked about administrative assistants and things like that. So just curious, what you guys' feedback is on that.
I say support roles in every sense of the word. So, like, as you mentioned, administrative support or whatever, but like
Mm-hmm.
IT, contact center, marketing, getting exposure in those support areas
Mm-hmm.
to get a sense of the business and how it all works. And then, of course, trying to find organizations that have that appetite for internal promotions to say, oh, okay, you know the business, you know how this works. We're going to keep giving you more until you find yourself being like, wow, I'm a technical expert in this, or now I want to become an engineer. So I think those are good gateways to get into more technical fields of study. I would say that, our CTO at my organization currently does not have a college degree, and he's our CTO. So if that puts it in perspective, and how if I recall correctly, he started in the help desk.
Oh, wow. Love to hear the success story. So there you have it, folks.
Great question, G.
Yeah, great question. Great question. Love that.
Appreciate that. That response was beautiful, by the way. Thank you.
Well,
Going to provide
Leo,
some great value there.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to do that. But I mean, Leo, you didn't come from tech. You were with the Pacers prior to, right? And you came in more of a sales support type of role.
Exactly.
So tell more about your story.
Yeah, get it from the bottom.
You said Pacers. I almost brought up the towel boy thing.
Oh yeah. So Emily, you know I often don't talk about myself either. So met Golightly in the art. I'll let him tell the story. He does a great job of telling the story. But this is pretty much when we first met. Which is also happened to be. Yeah, this might have been like, as soon as I started with the Pacers or something like that. It was shortly after. But go ahead, Golightly.
Yeah, super embarrassing to look back on, but I'll never forgive myself for it. I always bring it up. But I remember Leo telling me like, "Yeah, man, I work for the Pacers. This, and that." This is me right out of high school, just diving straight into logistics. My head was down. I had no idea what type of opportunities there were in this world. I'm like, "You work for the Pacers? I mean, he ain't balling. So like, what other positions do they have?" I'm like. He's like, what did you think I did for the Pacers? I was like, I don't know. Was he like a towel boy or something?
Yes.
Like this whole time you thought I was a towel boy. So like, when I think back about that now, it cracks me up and I'm always super embarrassed, but I'll never let that die.
Hilarious. Legit. Nothing against towel boys, but yeah, I was like,
yeah. Shout out to the towel boys.
Job. What? All right, cool. I think 5-5 time, right, Kendrick?
Yeah,
fast five.
Hit it off.
Alrighty, Emily. I don't even know if I prepared you for this, so good.
You did not, but let's do it.
Good luck. Alrighty, yeah, this is a fast 5, so we're gonna ask you 5 questions. Pretty much the first thing that comes to your mind. Super short answer, no explanation. Unless I, give you the caveat of, sometimes that happens where I give people the liberty. Okay. And then after that, so while you're giving me these fast answers, you also have to prepare yourself for the most important question, which is if you had to give a keynote speech today to anyone about anything that you're super passionate about, what would it be? Okay. So fast 5. And then immediately after, we're going to do the keynote speech. All right. You ready to go?
I suppose so.
All right. Guess you got to be now, right? All right. What is your favorite place to eat?
10 West here in town.
10 West. What kind of food is that? This is your caveat
everything.
To explain already.
Supporting local.
Okay.
It's a small town kitchen, and they do a really good job. They have my favorite dish is the fish tacos and the stuffed mushrooms as an appetizer, but they're all over the board. They serve a little bit of everything.
Okay, haven't heard of that one. Can you go check it out? Give us a review. Who is your role model?
A lady by the name Susan Weber. She actually was my successor. She was my mentor first, and in the pandemic said, "I'm looking for my successor. Would you want my job?" And that was one of the coolest experiences of my life.
Shout out to Susan.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, and this is a pretty important question. Okay, pretty important question. Fellas already know which one it's going to be. Can you cherish everyone?
Can I cherish everyone?
Yes.
So you will learn something about me. I make myself find good in every situation, no matter how terrible they are. So it would be very hard for some, but I think I could probably figure a way to do it.
Let's go. Love it, Emily. Alrighty, number 4. What are your outrageous goals that you're looking to accomplish this year?
Oh, to accomplish this year.
Yep, you can just give me one goal you're looking to accomplish this year.
So this is personal, like mom goal is to in my new promotion and just a lot that's going on at work is to always, no matter how crazy my day is, no matter if it was bad, terrible, like always make sure that my kids hear from me how much I love my job. So they will look at, when they're looking for a partner, when they're looking what they want to be when they grow up, they don't have like this negative feel towards work. because I want my kids to love what they do and be really excited for it. So this year I've made a commitment to have this audacious goal that I'm going to make sure that I can check stuff at the door and be present for them, and make sure when they ask me how my day was, I can say, something very good happened today. Let me tell you about it.
Something I want to do. Yeah. Being a part of. I love that. I love that because it's good for you as well as good for the kids.
Absolutely.
You almost took me out of focus on my fast 5. Number 5, where would you go in the event of a zombie apocalypse, or what would you do?
I would 100% drive to Kentucky where my brother-in-law is and live in his bunker, because he is prepared for every situation. He's a retired corporal medic, and I would
You'd be set.
We'd be set.
So we're headed to Kentucky.
Gave us bug out bags. Like, he's like, he is ready.
I always love when someone has a plan for this question.
So
it already has it ready. And I'm like, yeah, one day I'm going to build this and I'm going to do that. And you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly where I'm going to go. I know what's there already.
And I'm not going to tell you the location. It's in Kentucky. I'll be in the South.
I think if the zombie apocalypse happened, it would probably start down here in Florida. So I'm going to travel up to your house as soon as it breaks out.
Deal.
Alrighty. And as we wrap this up, if you had to give a keynote speech to anyone, anywhere today, what would it be?
And I will say, admittedly, you gave me this in advance, and I went back and forth a whole lot, but I hope even through the conversation today, this will all make sense, that if you, no matter what, no matter your situation, no matter what you are doing, you can always be kind, and you can show someone that you care. And so what I am passionate about is helping people realize that we are people, and to approach everyone with care, concern, and kindness. I've mentioned my kids. When we are praying together at night, something that you could, if we went upstairs right now and I grabbed either one of them, what does mommy pray for you? Happy, healthy, and caring. Mommy wants me to be caring, because I do think we don't know what's going on in people's lives. We don't know. I don't know how you all showed up today, right? We had to reschedule because I needed the extra time. And so how do I just, when I need those moments, how do I make sure I give those moments? Because I mean, how many times do you hear someone say, I'm so sorry, I can't. You don't have to apologize to me. We're human. That's fine. I'm here. We can flex. So I think showing people that kindness and caring can go such a long way.
Yeah. That's amazing.
I appreciate that. I can speak personally that you have always showed, like there's a little bit that I call you like, my mom in a lot of senses. You're definitely like the mom of the office. So I appreciate that, you being that example for, your family, being that example for me and a lot of my friends. Yeah. And thanks for coming on here. This conversation lasted longer than it was supposed to, but like I said, typically that's what happens when you're having good conversation. So tell the people where to find you.
Yeah. So because we're hiring on LinkedIn, right, you can find me at Emily Wolfington. And then I'm also a big fan of connecting like one-on-one. So if you want to find, I'm at Elements, but feel free to, can I give my actual email address?
That's all up to you. I will have your LinkedIn in the bio.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll do it that way. Find me on LinkedIn. But yeah, I do like understanding how I can help others. And so if my inbox is full, it may take me a minute, but I do always try to get back to people on LinkedIn on like career tips, advice, whatever it is. Because I do want, through this show, I want people to feel like someone cares for them.
Care, concern, and kindness. That might be the title of the podcast. All righty. Thank you, Emily, so much once again. Appreciate you both for hopping on as well. We got a master class on how to get our next job, how to improve our resume and interview skills. Make sure that you know where you're going for that next interview, before you get in the elevator. And then you care for people. Like we always say, pursue excellence and cherish everyone. Peace. Wait. All right. You just enjoyed that episode. I know it because you've made it to this point. If you wouldn't do me and the fellas a favor, while you're joining us at our dinner table, you're having food, maybe you're on a run, wherever you're listening to the episode, please take the time, 1 second, hit like, subscribe. We will see you on the next one. Peace.